For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Nearly 9 months have passed since barricades erected by the political opposition brought cities to a standstill in Venezuela. The violence that followed led to the deaths of 43 Venezuelans. And as our correspondent Rachel Boothroyd reports, the families of those who died continue to seek justice.
They are faces which are virtually unknown outside of Venezuela, yet each of these photos represents one of the 44 lives that were taken during the violent barricades which erupted in February this year in an attempt to overthrow the national government. These are the people who were left behind, wives, mothers and friends who are now organising to make these faces known, in spite of what they describe as the silence of international organisations such as the United Nations.
It's as if they had made all of these events invisible, made these victims invisible. The victims haven't been made known, their stories. That's why we want these stories to be heard, to be made known.
They have come together under the banner of the Committee for the Victims of the Barricades, officially established in Caracas this week. They all have a story to tell on how the barricades changed their lives. From the mother whose toddler had to be rescued from a burning daycare centre because of an arson attack, to the partner of a motorbike taxi driver decapitated by the barbed wire put up by protesters.
On Wednesday in the afternoon, I get a call saying to me they've shot him. Then I get the news from my best friend, a colleague of my husband, saying, "Sister, there is nothing more that we can do. Get your clothes and come to Valencia."
The barricades are said to have been a strategy thought up by right-wing politician Leopoldo Lopez, currently in jail and facing trial for promoting public violence. Since his arrest, his wife has been on a speaking tour in Europe, attracting the sympathy of the United Nations, which has officially petitioned the Venezuelan government for his release. But those here, such as Alvin Moreno, whose comrade Juancho was killed in the barricades, say Lopez is not the real victim.
They called on people to take the streets, to take part in that kind of protest, where there were so many deaths, and now they're talking about human rights. Well, we want the truth to be known.
Whilst the Venezuelan authorities take care of finding the perpetrators of the crimes, the committee says that it will take its demands for justice to organisations such as the International Court of Human Rights. They say that the world must stop turning a blind eye to the 44 people who lost their lives during the barricades. Rachel Boothroyd for Telesur in Caracas, Venezuela.
And thanks to Rachel, we turn to Central America now, where student groups of the Honduras National University come together to show their support for the families of 43 missing students in Mexico. For more on their message of solidarity, here's our correspondent Gerardo Torres.
The community of Honduras got together to show solidarity with the 43 missing students presumably killed by the Mexican authorities in the state of Guerrero.
Mexican society and Mexican students have a legitimate grievance because thousands of people have been disappeared in Mexico. Only during the period of President Enrique Peña Nieto, more than 9,600 people have disappeared.
While students in Honduras have been demanding to be part of the new changes authorities are promoting in the university, they came together to show their support for the 43 missing students and the thousands of students in Mexico that are facing repression, a situation they also denounce in Honduras.
As the authorities have said, this is a regional problem. However, the violence that is taking place against students on all levels in the regional centres of Honduras National University and the main campus is a fact. They are repressing students, and we are not far away from situations like the one in Mexico.
What happened to the students in Ayotzinapa, Mexico is a clear message of what could happen in the Latin American countries where conservative governments are willing to use extreme violence to keep themselves in power and to destroy any kind of protest against them. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
And thanks to Gerardo, the presidents of Haiti and Ecuador met today in Ecuador. For what the two leaders discussed, here's our correspondent Liz Sherfius.
President of Haiti, Michel Martelly, engaged in bilateral talks today with President Rafael Correa to discuss increased cooperation in the areas of defense, migration, education, and humanitarian aid. President Martelly voiced Haiti's support for Ecuador while the country presides over the CELAC body in 2015.
We know that Ecuador will take on the presidency of CELAC in January 2015. And to Ecuador from Haiti, they can count on our support during their term.
Speaking of the Haitian Revolution and the example it set for independence movements worldwide, President Correa warned of neocolonialism and the need for increased regional integration.
This South-South cooperation in this exchange of science and technology in the reconstruction of a country which has suffered a disaster is part of shared visions and shared political actions. With Haiti, we share this vision of integration and all that this implies.
Ecuador will keep providing humanitarian aid to Haiti as the Caribbean nation continues to rebuild following the devastating 2010 earthquake. The countries will work towards developing a joint migration policy as well as expanding scholarship opportunities for Haitians wishing to study in Ecuador. Liz Scherfius, Telesur, Ecuador.
And thanks to Liz. Also in Ecuador, the 11th United Nations Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species ended yesterday. Representatives from 120 countries attended. This year, the event focused on threats posed by illegal poaching. New endangered species have been added this year to the convention's list. Those include the polar bear, many sharks, sawfish, a white-eared cob, and some bird species. It marked the first time the convention was held outside of Europe. It was held in Ecuador, which is seen as a leader in the protection of animals. Sunday, an indigenous court found 7 FARC guerrillas guilty of murdering 2 leaders of the Nasa people, sentencing them to 40 to 60 years prison or 20 lashes for minors. One guerrilla admits to killing a NASA leader just last week. In Colombia, some indigenous authorities have jurisdiction over their own territory. Now, over the weekend, the FARC peace delegation reiterated its deep respect for the indigenous communities of the country. Many FARC members are also indigenous. And to Sierra Leone now, where the Cuban Medical Brigade is already working, treating those infected with Ebola. After a thorough training, they begin their work. The team is working in a hospital with 100 beds, one of the largest situated in the western rural district of Carytown.
It is an example of how a well-equipped hospital that meets present needs can be built in a few weeks. Carytown is currently concerned with how to protect those that work within its walls. It was built by the British military and is administered by Save the Children, but the majority of the doctors and nurses providing care are Cuban.
This is good. We can work here. The conditions are in place. And well, we are all here fighting to save the lives of our brothers.
All of the tasks and practices that we've been taught, first the theoretical ones in Cuba and the practices here, have been in place, and we have lost the fear with regard to our work, and we are developing well. Of course, taking care of ourselves and taking all the necessary.
The beginning has been very acceptable. We've had many patients and 3 have been discharged, and there is another that will be discharged this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
They work wearing the PPE uniforms up to an hour because they cannot tolerate any more than but with regular shift. They make sure the patients are accompanied by doctors and nurses 24 hours a day.
That protocol was established in a debate we have had between the organizations and ourselves.
The Cuban doctors and nurses work with 50 English-speaking doctors that have come with Save the Children, such as the Irish epidemiologist Carrie Garavan, who has said the Cuban doctors are marvelous. The hospital only has 7 patients. Save the Children has put in place a test week before filling the 100 beds, while in other public hospitals the sick and dead pile up. Meanwhile, here, at the hands of the Cubans, patients receive the necessary treatment for all the illnesses caused by Ebola.
We've seen things that have moved us, but despite everything, we are in good spirits in terms of health and emotionally as well. We are going to continue moving forward. We are going to give everything we can over the next 6 months.
Over the next few weeks, the rest of 165 Cuban medical professionals will go to various hospitals to learn and end, once and for all, this Ebola nightmare. From Freetown, Oscar Epelde for Telesur.
And thanks to Oscar. We go to Iraq now, where local media is reporting today that an airstrike has seriously wounded the Islamic State group's shadowy leader, Abu Bakr Baghdadi. The airstrike was reportedly carried out by the Iraqi Air Force in Anbar province in Iraq's west. The U.S. State Department says it can neither confirm or deny the reports, but supporters of the Islamic State group have taken to social media to claim Baghdadi escaped the blast unscathed. Staying in the Middle East, activists claim the Syrian government has lost control of the southern town of Nawa, though it remains unclear who is now running the settlement. Amateur footage posted online today appears to show fighters from both the Free Syrian Army and the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front moving through the city. The footage surfaced after days of fierce fighting in the area. Nawa's fall to rebel forces would mean the government would lose one of its few strongholds in the southern border, straddling the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The United Nations has named the leader of an investigation into allegations of Israeli war crimes. Specifically, the investigation will look into actions by Israeli forces during the country's attack on Gaza in July and August. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon chose retired Dutch General Patrick Kamerad to head up the effort. Human rights groups accuse Israeli forces of indiscriminately killing civilians, targeting schools and hospitals, and bombing UN facilities.
Is adopted.
And finally, New York's Deaf Theater will debut its latest play Tuesday. The classic novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde will be performed on stage in both spoken words and U.S. Sign Language. The play runs until Sunday. More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.